Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and alongside me is Matt
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good, everyone?
And on today's podcast, we're going to be reviewing the big games that were played midweek and what all of these results mean. As well, we're going to be previewing Matchday 24 of the Premier League coming up this weekend. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at house of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. Lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. As always, we love hearing from you guys and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. But let's get straight into it. We're going to start off with the only Premier League game taking place midweek. Arsenal won 3-Man City. The game lived up to its hype. I think it's fair to say, boys. A very entertaining game for the neutrals. Interesting tactics being deployed overall, I think, in the game, but particularly by Pep. Gio, can you give us an overall rundown of how you saw the game?
I just saw the game as Arsenal obviously started off, I think, much better, and then they kind of tailed off in the second half, unfortunately. But again, I think that had a lot to do with what Pep changed at halftime. Obviously, he started with a three in the back, and then he transitioned into a traditional four in the back, which is much safer, which is able to play his style of game better. I personally don't like when Pep sort of matches up to the other team. As long as Pep is able to control his style and play the way he wants, teams will fear that more than anything. So, I would rather Pep just stick to his style from the very beginning, so he's able to control the pace of the game and even control the pace of the game much longer. But with that being said, I do have to apologize to Jack Grealish for saying that I didn't want to see him on the pitch, but he did put away a great goal. So I'll give him credit there. But I think all the goals were very nice. All four of them were quite good looking goals. But yeah, very fun game for a neutral fan like me. But to see the battle get very close now and get very tight, it just makes the Premier League that much more exciting.
Yeah, just wanted to as well talk about a little bit of the changes that took place at Arsenal before the game started. Very similar lineup to, I guess, what took place in the weekend. But obviously, we heard the news ahead of the game that Thomas Partey was going to miss out, and so Jorginho stepped in. I think that was the only real change that Arsenal had, and it was like Gio said. I think Arsenal dominated the first little bit of the game, and it was quite open, but still, sort of, they were more on the ball and had a little more control. And then obviously we saw the back pass by Tomiyasu that went wrong. Those slight margins always will create chances in games, and obviously with a team like Man City with their quality, Kevin De Bruyne is going to put that away. So obviously that's 1-0, but Mac, Arsenal rallied after conceding that goal and looked definitely the better team towards the end of the first half and eventually getting their penalty kick, which Saka put away. What are your thoughts about that, Mac?
In terms of the individual penalty, I don't know if we want to have a conversation if that was a penalty, if that wasn't a penalty. For me, it's not much debate. I think it was a correct call. I loved how the referee made the decision. The commentator was speaking a lot on it in terms of it's not generally really called a whole lot of times for a goalkeeper making that action, but any other player does. That's definitely a foul. So I like the idea of that. I like the consistency of that. That's definitely the correct way to implement the rules. So it's great to see a response, and I think you both are absolutely correct with Arsenal overall. Probably, I would argue being the better team. Overall, against a Manchester City team, against a Pep team having 63% possession, is quite impressive. That very rarely happens. Normally, you're going to kind of surrender majority of possessions. Even over the last couple of years, teams that have kind of gone at City really have only kind of leveled with them in terms of being able to rally, trying to keep a high tempo game. Versus Arsenal, we're like, no. There are several times they could have been quicker in possession, but decide to try to control and really dominate the game in the way that they want to play. So you enjoy seeing that. Overall, you got to be happy with the approach, I guess the game plan that Arteta put them out there with. unfortunately, the execution wasn't the greatest to individual mistakes. And those are the fine margins in this game. I think we're messaging back and forth within a group chat where that's really kind of lost Arsenal. The game was individual errors consistently happening. And at a certain point, especially when the second goal goes in for Jack Grealish, it was just one too many, right? Where City, they weren't making those mistakes. They were cleaner at the back. They were more concise in possession. They were making sure that, you know what, if they had the chance to lump clear in those moments, they did do it. And we're making the right times and making the right decisions and when to play out and how to progress the ball forward. Whereas Arsenal, I think you can call it maybe championship naivety. You can maybe call it youth kind of getting in the way, but a couple moments where you just want to do something a little bit simpler. They kind of, I guess, doubled down and took a little bit too much risk and were caught in their minds a couple too many times where it's not just, of course, the Tomiyasu back pass, which we have never really seen him do. Zinchenko poor in possession to lead to the second goal. I think Gabriel for the third one, if I remember correctly. So overall, you can really pinpoint individual errors. Like, okay, if we just fix this, that doesn't happen. So overall, you got to be happy with a lot of the things watching Arsenal in terms of how they played. But unfortunately, they have no one to really blame but themselves, given that you can say it wasn't any moment of brilliance from Man City that kind of stole the game here. It was no kind of clean cut possession that broke them down. It was more just themselves.
Yeah, that's a big positive for Arsenal. But as you talk more about sort of how the two sides were clashing against each other, it just sounds like very typical Mourinho. If I don't have the ball, I don't have as many mistakes. They have the ball and they lose it up high at the pitch. Easier for us to get chances. And so you talked about it already, Mac, about sort of what won and lost the match for both of the teams. Gio, this result means City is first now by goal difference, both teams on 51 points. But Arsenal do have a game in hand at home versus Everton, and they do have to face each other at the Etihad later this season. How has this result changed this title race? What do you think?
See, look, like I mentioned in the previous podcast, I think it's important that win or lose this game, Arsenal still have to win their winnable games. I think with this year in particular, City just aren't as convincing as they were in the previous years. So, are there weeks where City can drop points? Absolutely. And have they? Absolutely. So for Arsenal, it's not so much about, okay, yeah, we lost this game. Oh, now we keep thinking about it. It's gonna drag on. Forget about it. Obviously, there's still a game coming up between you two. Make your changes then. But in the meantime, win your winnable games and try to win every game, really. Because if Man City are the Man City of early on in the season, then they will drop points and you can regain advantage there. But if you continue to mope around about this loss, it's not going to do any Gunners fans or any Arsenal players any justice.
Yeah, same question to you, Mac. Does this change the title race at all? The Arsenal mentality, Man City sort of now can say that they're sort of back where they expected to be, but like Gio said, Man City hasn't looked all convincing the whole part of the season so far. What do you think so far?
There's still a lot to be able to play for, and I think even Thierry Henry, when he was talking about it after the game, it was more, yes, you drop points, you can't have solid gripes about it, but you have to come out and immediately respond because you really don't have a whole lot of margin for error if City are playing to their potential. And Arsenal needs to know that if they do win out, they win the Premier League. That's just how it goes. So you need to come out and have immediate response. So this Aston Villa game becomes very, very important. And I think that if they were to drop points here, then I think at that point you can start worrying about it potentially snowballing and continuing on from there. I think, though, you have to look at the positives where earlier on in the season, I think this result very much for me mirrors their loss against Manchester United, their 3-1 loss there, where it was down very similarly to individual errors. They played well through large sections of the game, and they were able to come back the next week and be able to pick up a win. So having that same mentality to be able to do that, I think is vitally important. It'll be interesting to see if they do make any changes themselves. For City, though, on the other side, I do want to be able to talk about, I guess, the Bernardo Silva of it all, because he was, in terms of when you talked about the lineup earlier on, that was a very unique situation, and I think that in a lot of ways caused a lot of trouble for City, where it was Bernardo Silva trying to defend Saka one-on-one, and Grealish did very well to be able to come back consistently, and it seemed that was Pep's instructions to both of them, see if they can double him as much as possible. But it caused a lot of errors. And maybe only I think one time in the first half you ever saw Bernardo Silva really break through the middle and kind of be in possession alone. So I think that they still are not in their final form. They haven't really figured out what's their best way to play. Because against this Man City team, against this Arsenal team in this game, I think they were quite fortunate. But they may be able to get away with this for other teams. However, I think if they were to I guess be more successful for the rest of the Premier League season, they still haven't figured out, like I said, what they need to do week in, week out to be successful, because they're still really trying to find, and I know Gio talks about this with a lot of teams, their best 11. And there's still a lot of work there needs to be done. So it's still a long way to go. It could go either way. And both teams, of course, have a shout. I think if you would ask me who would win, you could flip a coin. It's between one of those two, and I don't think there's really anyone else in it.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that you note Bernardo's positioning, and obviously, as we were talking in the game, that looked like it was going to be the weak spot for City. Saka actually did a really good job to put, I don't know if it's the right way to say, is put Bernardo under pressure by accumulating those fouls and him getting a yellow card. But even in the first half, City picked up yellow cards for Bernardo Silva. I think Kyle Walker as well. Either late in the early in the second half or late in the first half, he picked one up as well. And even Ederson, him picking up that yellow card for time wasting in the first half. You can really see that Man City are still trying to figure, I think, those things out. And I think, as an Arsenal fan, the only criticism I would say, if I'm looking to make a push for the title, is these are the chances that we want to, if we had the chance to get the type of players like Mudryk or another offensive player who would have put pressure on Kyle Walker or whoever came on for, I think it was Mars that came off and it was Akanji that came on in the second half. Try to put some pressure on that back line because they have yellows. If you do have players that can go at these players and cause some problems, maybe there's chances, maybe there's another couple of yellow cards picked up and then it puts them on a little bit more of a back foot. So I think in a sense you could say Arsenal, this is a missed chance to sort of get at least a positive result. But what do you think, guys?
So to be able to jump in there, sorry, Gio, I completely agree with you, because if you take away the penalty shot, they didn't have a single shot on target, right? Which is very disappointing in regards to if you want to be creative, because there were a lot of moments where if you look at it and you watch the game, because if you just look at that stat, be like, oh, Arsenal probably didn't do a whole lot, right? They probably just had a lot of possession. There wasn't a lot of creativity. But there were kind of key decisions in the final third that certain players made incorrectly. For example, like Nketiah barely missed latching onto a ball. Xhaka later on in the game, instead of either laying it off or cutting and shooting with his left foot, to try to fake again, and then of course lost the ball to end up, I think it was Ruben Diaz, right? So overall, in those moments, if you have maybe another player, another option like you talked about, that could be very beneficial. But you have to, just as I want to give them credit for ways that they went about this game, you got to be able to also understand that I would have to say as well that in those moments they made the wrong decision continuously, right? Where if you had talked about maybe there is that other striker instead of Nketiah coming in, and maybe the 60th minute you could bring on a different striker, a different option, because the only option up front three that they've really started to utilize is Trossard, and that was from Martinelli, and they've generally done it fairly late into the game. So there's never been a 60 minutes, things are not going well, let's change it up with a different variable. It seems because of the depth that they have, they don't have that additional option to come in and shake up the game. So I think that's a huge miss for them. But Gio, sorry, you wanted to be able to jump in there as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and give a certain player a little bit of credit. It's a man like Jorginho. I think we have to give a little bit of credit to. I think when you look at the percentage of possession, if you look at a player like Thomas Partey, yes, he could have made a difference, but I don't think he would have had as much percentage of possession. I think Jorginho is the type of player to keep the ball more and make those safer passes in order for you to maintain that possession. As a player like Partey, would want to move the ball forward, would want to make, a longer stretch pass, that could be intercepted and could go back the other way. So I think in terms of the game aspect, both players would have been done well. I think Jorginho did quite well for his first start at Arsenal. But yeah, I will definitely want to give him some credit there for stepping in such a tough game as his first start?
I mean, Champions League. Sorry, facing the champions of last year. That's just as big as it gets, right? So, we'll see how he integrates. Obviously, with Aston Villa being the team Arsenal is facing this weekend. Another, I think, tough matchup for them, but we'll see how Arsenal are able to bounce back. On the other side, though, City is facing Nottingham Forest away. They do have a Champions League tie coming up next week, so I do predict a heavy rotation on that team, and so we'll definitely see how it goes. So let's wrap up this part here, guys, and then we'll be back with some more midweek football to talk about. Stay with us. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. And now for this part of the podcast, we're going to talk about the midweek European games. Mac, are we excited for the return of the Champions League now?
No. Still no. I'm not. I don't know. I caught in the lays, like the mid-afternoon games. I'm just not 100% into it right now. I'm still watching the games, but it's not like the same level of excitement. Maybe just because it's the round of 16. I don't know.
Maybe. But obviously, we have to start with the two big, I guess, favorites for this year's Champions League. PSG 0-1 Bayern. Gio, this was a Champions League final replay from 2020 where Kingsley Coman was the only goal scorer of that game. And similarly, that's the same result that took place for this game. Bayern, I think, with more chances and more control of the ball. Definitely for, I would say, 2/3 of this match. Coman really stood out for me. And obviously, PSG started without Mbappe. Didn't look like they were comfortable. And going forward, it was just trying to hit Neymar on the break or find something from Messi, because a lot of the possession was controlled by Bayern, and the sort of transitional play wasn't there for PSG, it looked like, before Mbappe came on. What did you think, Joe?
No, I think you kind of talked about it well. Look, I think without Mbappe, again, like I said in the previous podcast as well, is that they rely on these three guys so heavily that alleviates the pressure from the midfield. Obviously, it buys the midfield more time, so it kind of makes the midfield look much better than they actually are. And without it, it's just not fluid. So understandably, PSG did not look all that fluid until Mbappe kind of got on and things kind of started rolling a little more. But credit to Bayern, they look like a team out there. They look like a different Bayern from the Bundesliga. Although only scoring one goal in the game, I don't think that's a fair show for how well they actually played. I think Musiala, of course, is a beast. Kimmich, whenever he plays for Bayern, he's a different animal, especially in these big games. And Kingsley Coman, you can never really count out with that type of pace. But yeah, credits to him for scoring that goal.
And Mac, obviously Mbappe changed the game when he came on. I think he had at least one goal disallowed by offside. I think on balance of the chances that they got towards the end of the game, they should have tied, but it doesn't really tell the story. I think Bayern should have been more comfortable winners, and they, I think, will be happy with that result. What do you think, Mac?
So Bayern, of course, will definitely be very happy with this result. I think you're absolutely spot on in regards to this game really had two different, even though there's two halves, there's two parts for me. It was pre-Mbappe, post-Mbappe, where he came on and he added a different level of threat where both Messi and Neymar, they're both more controlling, kind of want to retain possession, so to the ball, and not necessarily want to be able to stretch the defense and be able to create in runs in behind, whereas Mbappe is willing to do that because he has the pace to, even when he's behind in a race, to be able to catch up and get possession. A couple times he was caught offside in regards to, and then end up scoring a goal. So, of course, that's unfortunate. I think one was just by the smallest of margins as well. But you could see the different level of threat and space he creates, as Gio kind of highlighted. So I think that it was real kind of split between the game, where if he ended up was starting in the game, was maybe full percent healthy, that PSG probably would have edged us out and we would have seen a different result. The lucky part about the Champions League, thus at least as of right now, there's still the two matchups. So PSG still have a chance to come back in. It's not a kind of an over, let's say it's not as large of a hurdle as what it could have been, because Bayern were very comfortable in possession, creating a lot of opportunities going forward for themselves. I do want to touch on that even the goal that Bayern did score, if you asked Donnarumma probably what was one of his biggest mistakes of his career, he probably would say that already, because he hasn't made many,
Right.
and that was a big one because that was a very scummy goal. So in terms of a goalkeeper perspective, he would definitely look at himself in the mirror. He's probably watched too many Hugo Lloris highlights. I don't know. But overall, I don't think you can kind of take too much away from this game, considering the lack of Mbappe for a large portion of it, and the change he did have. So if you ask me right now, do you see PSG coming back and winning 3-1 in the reverse fixture? Quite possibly. That could very well easily happen. So there's still a lot to play for, and I still think if you ask me who would win this, you could flip a coin here as well. But overall, I think of all the games, this was this may have the most implications for, as you kind of highlighted, who may come out as a favorite to win it all.
Yeah, and just quickly, Gio, with regards to PSG chances of getting a result, Benjamin Pavard obviously picked up 2 yellow cards. Will miss the next game with a red card. So, with that front three, you can never really count PSG out, I guess. But what do you think? What do you give the chances for PSG to come back?
I just want to say, first off, shocking tackle. I don't know how he thought he would possibly get away with that. But no, I just don't see PSG, dominating the game to that extent. Bayern know how to play fundamental football. They know how to, for lack of a better term, kill games. And what if they're killing games and they're dragging you out, then they're gonna open the space and they're gonna have open seams and they're gonna have open space to run into, and they have the pace for that as well. Likes of Leroy Sané, Jamal Musiala, Kingsley Coman, the guy who scored on you the first time. So, PSG have to be very careful, but I think when it's all said and done, Bayern is gonna be the team who moves on.
Okay, quick. I like that. Okay, let's move on to the next game. Borussia Dortmund 1, Chelsea 0. Very exciting game, even though it was between the team that is known for having those smart pickups, buying them cheap and selling them at high prices, and the team in Europe that's basically buying everyone and their aunt this year. So it was always going to be an interesting matchup. I think it was quite even in terms of chances, a lot of chances and a lot of back and forth. At the end, though, Adeyemi gets that all-important goal. He's my guy, and so I have to shout him out. But on that note, I just had to bring up a video, an audio clip now for you guys to listen, because this is what our friends think of Chelsea's problems. So I'm not sure you guys heard that,
No,
but essentially there is a lot of problems with this Chelsea team in terms of going forward. They did create a lot of chances, Mac. I think enough chances to at least get a tie, but still, I think there's going to be a lot of questions asked for Graham Potter and how he can turn this around. What do you think, Mac?
So I think this was a much better performance overall. There's a lot more players in the box. They had a lot more attacking threat. João Felix and Havertz were looking a little bit better, kind of playing off of Havertz would really kind of try to retain possession. A couple of times João Felix was able to run off him and create some opportunities and even hit the post once. So you can be happy with the progression there. Am I worried, let's say, necessarily when they get to the byline and they're able to cross the ball into the box, do I think they're ever going to score? Probably not. Definitely not. It really is mostly in transition or a creative 1-2 down centrally. So I feel like their avenues to potentially score are very limited, but there is some progression. So I understand to be frustrated, completely fair. I think if you were asking me, do I think Chelsea did outchance Borussia Dortmund? I would very much agree with that. They had a lot more opportunities on the goal. Borussia Dortmund's the goalkeeper, really had to make a couple of phenomenal saves. Like, for example, one off Enzo Fernandez trying to take it into the top corner. So you can look at and take positive out from this Chelsea performance. Overall, should Chelsea be, given the amount of money that they spent, given the pressure that they have, this Borussia Dortmund team, I'd say maybe 7 out of 10 times? Yes. So you can be disappointed there, but there are some progressions. So it's not all doom and gloom after this game. I would really, if I could, want to rag on Chelsea and talk about how horrible they are. But for this game, I can't be too upset, given the amount of opportunities they had and how I saw them last play to now. There was improvement. The interesting part will be is that, do they continue to kind of create opportunities at this level week in, week out for both the Premier League and in the reverse fixture for the Champions League? Because If they are able to do that, then there's a fair chance they might score a couple more goals because, to be honest, they have nowhere to go but up in that department.
Yeah. On that note, Havertz unfortunately looks like shadow of himself. Very out of form, not looking very confident in front of the goal. And even though Joao Felix is getting into good positions, you can sort of see that he hasn't gotten that touch yet. So games are going to come quick and fast, and results are needed. Gio, what do you think are the chances for Chelsea to turn this around?
High. I think very high.
Oh.
I think with the chances you saw, especially the first earlier chance, where Joao Felix was in the middle of the box and just skied it a little. It was a lot closer. After watching the review, and they had a fair amount of chances, goals cleared off the line, things of that nature. One lucky bounce your way, and they're back in the game. It's only 1-0. And yeah, I think Joao Felix is definitely, the highlight point of their team. The way he kind of pushes the pace forward, pushes the ball forward, running in behind, getting shots off. I think that's what they're missing. But if it's not Joao Felix, the front three, when they progress, they always run in a straight line.
Yeah.
And there's no midfielder, which everybody's been crying out for, to connect that. So every ball's coming in from out wide, so crosses in. But there's no balls on the ground, through balls from the ground being played from the middle. So I think, again, at the end of the day, when we look at it from the January window to now, they're still looking for that midfielder to complete those types of passes. So I think until they sign one in the summer, they'll still be a side that is struggling offensively, like our friend said. They have no ideas offensively.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I completely agree. They struggle with creativity unless Joao Felix is doing making all those runs for them.
Yeah, Matt.
So I want to compare and contrast. It's like there's been two methodologies really in terms of how teams are going to score goals from kind of a front attacking process. You either have kind of a striker that you're funneling the chances to, which of course Chelsea do lack, or you have overloads in midfield positions to be able to kind of take on players. And in a lot of situations, you see that kind of being a 5-on-4 defenders where you have a front three with maybe more of a creative central attacker and two other midfielders that join up into attack. Chelsea are trying to create that in some ways, and that's why you see the Mount and Gallagher at midfield trio sometimes with a holding mid. But the problem is that, like as you guys talked about, the connection between the two and how they progress the ball in the final third, everyone else starts so deep that there is no central threat. Whereas, for example, the previous couple of years when you look at Manchester City play, everyone always talked about like that third man midfield run, because there's always that extra player attacking where it's a 5-on-4 in a lot of cases. And Chelsea right now still haven't figured that out. I think it's one of two things really. Obviously, there's a lot more ways to score goals. Being very simplistic about it, but unless they make a change in attacking sense in the summer, which reports have been that's what they're looking for to bring in that kind of funnel taking striker, I'm personally skeptical in terms of anyone having that large of an impact. Or change their play style where they're going to be more progressive, they're going to be more front foot,
right,
where they're going to have those extra bodies in the box, which you saw hints of at some points, but that it has to be a consistent theme week in, week out if you don't have that kind of a main goal threat.
Yeah, I mean, the positive thing for Chelsea is they are facing bottom of the league Southampton this weekend, so best time to get some ideas through those players and hopefully bag a couple goals, get those confidence levels up, and hopefully they can turn things around. But let's move on to the other game we're going to cover. AC Milan 1, Spurs 0. Brahim Diaz opened the scoring quite early on, 7 minutes in, after essentially Theo Hernandez beat Romero on the right-hand side. The shot went off Fraser Foster onto the path of Brahim Diaz, who was able to put it in, and really from that point on, I think it was, in terms of chances, you could say it was evenly split, but I think AC Milan did have the better chances. And personally, Gio, I'm very disappointed about the Spurs performance because all the chances that I was really able to see were shots from outside the box, maybe a couple of crosses here and there. And against a team like AC Milan, who in the last couple of games lost to it. Excuse me, lost in Inter Milan in the Supercoppa, 3-0, lost to Lazio 4-0, and lost to Sassuolo 5-2. I would have expected Spurs to have more of an attacking threat and try to go at them, but that's exactly the opposite of sort of what we saw. What do you think about this game, Gio, and this result?
Wait, sorry, you said you're disappointed? No, I was pretty happy with the result, actually. um, what a shock, right? No, but I mean, yeah, Spurs looked like they couldn't generate any offense, and I think not that AC Milan played a fantastic game. I think Spurs just played a bad one. There are a lot of holes that you can exploit from AC Milan. Like you said, they haven't been on a good run of form. It's not hard to take notes from these teams that beat them. They rely heavily on the players out wide, balls in and across. They like to send it out wide for players like Leao to take players on one. Inside in the middle, they're not too much of a threat. But Spurs kind of let it happen. I think it was Hernandez who got to dribble into the box and have a shot, and
Right.
And the struggling defense of Spurs, who had obviously a bad weekend against Leicester, weren't covering the runners, and that's what happens. And it was easy for AC Milan to set up shop because without say Harry Kane or a couple of years back of a human Son, they weren't going to create much. So yeah, no, all credits to AC Milan for just getting the job done. Although they didn't play well by any means, they got the job done, and I think that's all they can really be happy about.
I guess Mac, are there any positives for Spurs? I guess they're only down 1-0, and they do have that game at home. But I'm not sure I would give them much hope. What do you think?
So, with regards to how completely shite they've been, I'll be completely honest. There's not many positives. The only positives I have, like you said, they still have a chance to come back, and no matter what happens with this week Premier League weekend, they'll still remain fifth in the Premier League. So it could be worse, but they have time to be able to turn things around. The unfortunate part is in the Premier League and in the Champions League, it's not much time. They need to come out with a very good performance in the Champions League to be able to make sure that they can kind of stick away and continue on if that's kind of what their goal would be to do. And in the Premier League, same thing. They need to be able to turn it around quickly because even though there's still a long time left, they're 2 points off of Newcastle, and I already played an extra game in hand. I already played an extra game in comparison to them, and 7 points off of Manchester United with the same games played. So the gap is widening there. So they need to make sure that they have a quick turnaround, and they're facing London rivals this weekend. So against West Ham, so that should be a fascinating game. And a derby like that, you never know what could really happen. So they need to come out, and I would say they need to get all 3 points against West Ham to at least have some sort of good forward momentum.
Quickly, do you give them a chance to get that result against West Ham this weekend?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to go a tie. 0-0 tie probably. Not going to watch that game. No, I'm going to watch the game, but it's going to be excessively boring.
Joe, same question.
Yeah, it's a pass for me, dog.
Okay, well, a game that we're not going to pass on, just to wrap up this part of the podcast, Europa League playoff game between Barcelona and Manchester United. Ended 2-2. Opening of the game quite open for both sides to sort of take the lead. Chances fell on both sides until the second half, where Barca did open the scoring through a set piece corner that Marcos Alonso gets on the end of. And from there, Gio, Man U kind of woke up and really took the game to Barca. Rashford really being in the center of everything, scoring the first one, and essentially 2 minutes after they conceded, and then setting one up approximately 10 minutes after the first goal went in, and it looked all good for Manchester United. What did you think, Gio?
I think if I'm going to be completely honest, yes, I'm happy with this result, but the way everything turned out, they weren't great goals from either side. I could have been equally as happy if this game ended 0-0. Those are the quality of the goals that went in today. So I think it was poor goaltending on both sides, from Ter Stegen and De Gea on the first goal, and then the second goals were obviously lucky bounces, mistakes from Jules Koundé, and then obviously, sorry, and kind of the screen, yeah, the screen, kind of running by the ball, not actually touching the ball, and it trickling in. Very unfortunate, but again, to me, the scoreboard says 2-2, but to me, it was a 0-0 game. It was mistakes, but also I'm happy in how Man U kind of fought back. They didn't really give up on the game. A lot of times once they concede, it's kind of like, a lot of side to side passing, not too much forward passing. But yeah, I think ETH has them on a good, line, and excited for the reverse matchup at Old Trafford.
Yeah, Mac, would it be fair to say Manchester United should be the happier with this result, based on sort of what transpired in the game?
Absolutely. Even though both teams did have a comeback, Manchester United coming back from being 1-0 down, and Barca coming back from being 2-1 down. So you can really twist it and kind of skew it to any perspective, because you can take a whole lot of positives from either team and you can take a whole lot of negatives from either team. So for me, the truth is somewhere in the middle. The main difference would be is that the reverse fixture is back at Old Trafford, right? And Manchester United this year thus far, especially since I would say just after the World Cup, have played very, very well at home, and they could definitely continue to kind of expect to do so. It's great to see Rashford get on the score sheet again to keep his momentum going. I think that's absolutely vital. Just make sure he stays in that kind of a happy, healthy place where he's fit enough to keep playing all these matches, because the games, as we're talking in between kind of sections here, the games are going to come fast and quick for United, as they're part of 4 different competitions. They're in their own way. They're chasing the quad, right, Ray? As you were talking about last year, we were always talking about that. Man, you were doing the same thing here. No pressure, no pressure. The main difference being that one of the 4 is in the Champions League, it's the Europa League. But tomato. What can you do? But I think overall it should be interesting, and it will be interesting in the coming weeks to see what they do prioritize, because they have a little bit of cushion on 4th place right now in the Premier League. They have a cup final. I think, is it next weekend, Gio, if I remember correctly. So there's a lot of matches very, very quick, and they do still have some injuries. So it'll be interesting to see how they continue to adjust and if they're able to carry the momentum going forward.
They actually next weekend. Yeah, that's correct. But you?
Yeah. No, I think you mentioned it earlier. You kind of asked me what I would prefer. If they were ousted of the FA Cup, they still have the Carabao Cup final coming up, Europa League, and, focusing on maintaining that, top 3, top 4 spot. Again, I would agree with you. If they were to lose the FA Cup, I wouldn't be too mad. If they won the Carabao Cup, just to say they got a trophy this year, that's great progress. And then I would obviously want them to try and win the Champions League. Sorry, not Champions League. Wishful thinking. Sorry.
It's okay. You're thinking of City there. You want them to win the Champions League.
Yeah. No. So, with that being said, if they won the Europa League, it would almost guarantee the spot, no matter how the Premier League turned out. So that's still very important to me. So, a lot of games coming, so they can't take any game very lightly. And again, the players that still need to come back, like Anthony, I think Lissandro, for whatever reason, didn't play today. Hopefully, it's nothing serious. Christian Eriksen, obviously, out for a couple of months so. Once all those players are good to go, I think it will be much more confidence. But they just gotta learn to live and maintain right now, and try to do their best and get points.
Yeah, and you mentioned it actually. All the games are coming quickly. Leicester is going to be attending Old Trafford this weekend for that Premier League matchup, and I expect a lot of rotation from this Manchester United team, obviously ahead of their game reverse fixture against Barca, and then also their EFL Cup final next weekend. Not a good time to be facing Leicester, I think. Mac, what do you expect to happen in this game?
I think that's a very, very, very tough game, because Leicester are probably playing the best form right now and will love playing spoiler. I think there's nobody on that team that doesn't enjoy trying to defeat one of the big dogs. They generally play very, very well against the bigger teams. I think Manchester United, because it's still early in those kind of the run of games, I think they should edge it out here. But I think you asked the correct question: is what's the rotation look like? Because if there's heavy switches, you can definitely see Leicester coming away and at least snagging a point, maybe getting all three. If kind of these rotation players come in for Manchester United and don't perform well, if you, for example, you decide you want to be able to rest Casemiro, you want to rest Varane for a weekend, I think that has such a dramatic impact on the rest of the team of how they play that you could see them not do well against this Leicester team. So it's tough to know. I'll hope for a tie, and I think that would be interesting. And I, to be honest, I don't think that's a horrible result for Man U, considering how things run out, if they pull out most of their B squad. So I think that's what I would go with.
Same question to you, Gio.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? You kind of cut off.
Sorry, it will be Leicester at Old Trafford. What do you think will happen in this game with, obviously, Manchester United keeping an eye out on those next couple of crucial games?
It's tough because you saw what they did to Spurs. So you can't take this game lightly by any means. So yeah, no. If I'm Rashford or I'm ETH, it's I gotta score. I gotta score a lot. They have to get this win. Just to prove Mac wrong. And I say Mac because he said some outrageous things way back in the past that like. Iheanacho, can be on the same level as Rashford. Back when he was on City, And I remember
if he was on City, though. Did I say that?
I remember to this day when he made that comment, and I was like, no way in hell. So yeah, this is a grudge match for me, especially cheering on Rashford. So yeah, I'm hoping for a very, very convincing win.
Okay, well, we're going to be taking one last break here, guys, and then we'll be bringing up a Matchday 24 preview of the remaining games, so stay with us. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We're just going to finish off the podcast for today with a quick Matchday 24 preview for the remaining games that we haven't covered so far. I guess the most notable one right now is Newcastle will be hosting Liverpool. Liverpool did win the reverse fixture 2-1 at home earlier in the season, and that added time debacle with how much actual time was played. Liverpool will have an eye out for the upcoming Champions League match against Real Madrid on Tuesday, so that sort of might have some implications on sort of what team they choose to put out, but I think Liverpool should be looking to put out their strongest team here and try to go for it all. That being said, Gio, I think we are on the same page. I don't know if there's a lot of chance for that positive result for Liverpool, maybe a tie. I think Newcastle are solid enough all around to keep Liverpool out and even get a goal themselves. So, yeah, I'm not exactly sure about that result for Liverpool. I think it'll be a fascinating game. Not as high scoring, but we'll see what happens. What do you think, Gio?
Yeah, no, I think it's a much different side than that of Everton's. Obviously, much more solid defense and much more gifted offensively. From the middle up. So, yeah, I think they have a lot more to worry about. I think they'll look to exploit again Trent's side with like players with such as ASM. Having to deal with Trippier long balls. So the high line needs to be very careful here. Yeah, I think they're facing a much different animal from last week when they faced Everton, who really couldn't get much going, especially with Sims up front. So yeah, it's not Sims up front this week. So you better tie those boots tight and get ready to play some football.
I guess same question to you, Mac. Do you think Liverpool can get that result, or will it be a Newcastle win here?
I'm gonna go for neither. I'll be completely honest. I'm gonna go for a straight tie here. Newcastle have tied 5 of their last 6 games. Have only scored 2 in that time period. Have only conceded 2 goals and have only scored 3. So they're very much on fine margins here. And I think Liverpool. I think the good sign, if you see progression from Liverpool, if they don't concede more than a goal, I think that's where you could look at some sort of positive action. I think at the end of the day, their chances are going to come and go. They have a system theoretically that kind of creates high volume of chances for even kind of below average finishers to still get a decent amount of goals. So I think that will come out over time. The key part is defensively. Can they maintain their shape? Can they make sure that Newcastle, who struggles offensively, to be completely honest, can we make sure that they don't kind of get at us and put us in uncomfortable positions in a defensive sense. So that's more so what I'm looking from Liverpool. From Newcastle, though, I feel like if they do come out and pull up another draw, I think then you're going to, because they did make an addition in the January transfer window towards the end of Anthony Gordon. He did come on and play decently well, I feel like, in the last round of fixtures, but they do need to have more of a threat. And if for whatever reason, not that I would have predicted to be the case, if Tottenham pick up 3 points and Newcastle continue to drop points here through ties, everyone's going to look at the fact that they're not scoring. So they need to start picking it up there. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure on both teams in that one aspect, Liverpool defending and Newcastle attacking.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously Newcastle signed a Everton player, Anthony Gordon, who in the reverse fixture between Liverpool and Everton early in the season, Anthony Gordon was doing a lot for that Everton offense, and him facing Liverpool side, him being from Everton, Newcastle at home, I think he's going to either get a goal or get a red card. Something's going to happen with him. He's definitely going to be in the headlines, and so I'll be excited to see what transpires in that game. But quickly moving on, guys, Brighton is facing Fulham, and you might wonder why we're talking about Brighton and Fulham. Brighton is currently 6th, and Fulham are currently 7th in the Premier League. They are both tied on 35 points. Fulham won the reverse fixture 2-1 at home earlier this season. Mitrovic scored and was the man of the match. But since he's kind of dropped off in form, even though Fulham's have been continuously picking up decent results here and there. But Brighton are a different beast at this point. So I think they're quite evenly matched, and it'll be very interesting to see how this game will turn out. What do you think will happen?
I think, in my opinion, I'm really enjoying how both teams have been playing their football recently. I think Fulham has a lot in terms of what Willian to give to the club. Mitrovic kind of playing centrally down the middle for them. They have a lot of different attacking threats that can be interesting. Reversely, for Brighton, I think Matoma has really shown out and kind of taking that spot on that left wing spot, and is probably, along with Caicedo, on a short list, and McAllister. They are just the team that's continuously looking to be able to. They're always in the rumors to sell that next great player to one of the big clubs. So both teams, I feel like, have a lot to be able to bring to the table. Personally, I would want to see Brighton trying to edge this out, give it a little bit more, and chase down the Spurs, the Newcastles, the Manchester United, and close that gap there to see if they can get in a top 4 conversation. Because then that might put them in a position where those players might not want to leave, and they can create potentially another kind of exciting club to be able to watch in the Premier League as well. To be completely honest, it would be hilarious to see Brighton make Champions League and Chelsea not, considering Graham Potter and Cucurella both left them to play in the Champions League theoretically. So that also is very an enjoyable side piece of why I want Brighton to perform very, very well. But like I said, they have the players to do so. And I think Brighton, just as well as they play offensively, defensively have a little bit more to them than Fulham does. So I would edge out Brighton here to come out and pick up all 3 points.
Okay, I guess same question, Joe. What do you expect to happen in this game?
Honestly, I want to see some fast and exciting football. I'm expecting two teams that are very obviously on a better form. I want to see what they do and how they play against each other, just because they're so close in position. And again, I guess it's the Asian side of me who wants to see Matoma obviously do very well in the Premier League. He's had a great season, and honestly, if another Premier League side were to come knocking and want to pay some decent money for him, and by decent I don't mean a lot. It can be anywhere 15 to 20 mil. Brighton can make a pretty penny off of him as well. So no, I think I would love to see him score again, but I would love to see a man like Willian keep balling out as he has been this season. So it should be a fun match, especially if you're a neutral. Expect a lot of back and forth, and I personally think there will be a lot of goals scored. So yeah, expect some goals in this game.
Okay, definitely keep an eye on that. And just to wrap up the podcast, boys, Everton versus Leeds, talking about two teams that are really close together in the Premier League table at the moment. Leeds are and Everton are right next to each other. Leeds are 17th with 19 points, and Everton are 18th with 18 points. So this one, Gio, not a lot separating them. A point in the league, and they tied the game earlier this season at Ellen Road. But Everton at home, will they be able to bounce back after that defeat against Liverpool and get the win, or do you think Leeds can, perform and get that result away from home?
Look, if I wasn't, a part of this podcast, I wouldn't wake up for this game. Nor should you. But I think I think I think if I had to pick, I would have to pick. I would actually side with Leeds on this one. I think even when they've played, when I watched them play Man U, back to back games, I just like it's just like a different lead squad. I know it's a different Everton squad now too. They look like they've kind of woken up a little, but I just like the slight bit of physicality that Leeds brings, especially with McKennie in the middle. Luke Ayling, who's been a Premier League vet for a while now, who never seems to back down from any challenge or anything like that. I just think the physicality aspect of it. I think Leeds will get themselves a couple of chances, and I think Bamford is close to scoring a couple himself. He's had some close chances against Man U himself, so I can see him putting one by this week. Just because he's been so close the past couple of chances, I will edge this one to Leeds.
Okay, to wrap it up, Mac, what do you think will take place?
I think overall, I would have to agree with Gio. I'm going to go with Leeds here. They're the home team. Everton, I still don't, I guess, trust a whole lot. Defensively, I think they should be much more solid. So I wouldn't be surprised if you have this game and it's a 0-0 tie, to be completely honest. Both teams are not overly impressive as they've been thus far this season. Maybe Leeds do have a shake-up here. It's tough to be able to kind of nail down who I would say is more of a favorite here in a lot of different ways. I lean Leeds, partly because it's a little bit biased. I would rather see them stay up than Everton in a lot of ways. A little bit more excitement to them. Versus now we have another Sean Dyche team. So, that very short, very simple, but that's all I really feel about this game.
Yeah, well, obviously we're going to continue covering all these games and definitely be back to hear our review for all this action. So we're going to conclude our podcast here. Thank you guys for listening. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at @house_of_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, feel free to get in touch with us as well via email, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us, like I said, will be Tuesday when we review the weekend's action. On that note, thank you, Mac.
Thank you. And referees call fouls on soccer. That's not fair.
Thank you, Gio.
Rashford masterclass incoming.
And thank you guys for listening.